Good morning, everybody. Saturday, March 28th, 2020. Time for this week's Eco Investment Update for the week ended March 28th. And what a week it was, with a huge rally, and gave back quite a bit, well, a little bit of that on Friday. Very spooky times for sure. A lot of moving parts on the board right now. A lot of things to talk about. March 23rd, 2020 is a day that you should burn into the history books because it is the day that the United States fully embraced two concepts they're both kind of embodied in it's embodied in socialism, but that is nationalization of the banking and finance exchanges, as well as full-on socialism. Socialism, of course, is public ownership and responsibility for the running of enterprise in the expectation of distributing profits equally. Well, we've been really good at distributing losses over the last week and a half, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that, as trillions and trillions of dollars of value have been blown to smithereens, and lo and behold, the Treasury and the Federal Reserve have come to the rescue and said, well, we'll own it all. We'll take parts of corporations, we'll take mortgage debts, we'll take bundled car loans, we'll take student loans, we'll take first mortgage obligations on plant and equipment, we'll take it all. There's not much we won't take in the way of debt. Well, that to me is full-on nationalization and socialization of the system. Also, obviously, with the pandemic going on, there's definitely more control over the movements of people and things. And in reality, if you study the Communist Manifesto and the tenets of Marx and Engels, is published in that book, I believe that was published in 1840, something around in there, you will see that socialism is considered a stepping stone on the way to communism, and Marx and Engels noted as such in their book, The Communist Manifesto. Anyway, we have achieved that full nationalization now, with the government responsible for really every aspect of every American's life now, and certainly the nationalization of the banking and financial systems as we see now. It's de facto. It's a done deal. It's almost as if Bernie Sanders was elected and everything that he stood for came true in one fell swoop in 1 week, 1 day in March of 2020. How did we get here? The other date you should mark is April 5th, 1933. Banks had been failing like crazy. FDR had been in office something less than a month. And the Federal Reserve realized that there weren't enough gold reserves to cover all of the paper dollars that were out in circulation at that time. The Federal Reserve was founded in 1913 and charged with maintaining orderly markets and liquidity and things like that. Well, in 1933, because of runs on banks and people pulling gold out, there simply wasn't enough gold. And Roosevelt acknowledged this in his fireside addresses, noting that there was a deficiency of gold and silver to back up the United States obligation. The trick was you had to somehow uncouple gold from the paper dollar market, because at that time the Federal Reserve was limited in the money that they could create. They had to have 40% good assets to lend against or to have 40% great assets to be able to issue currency against that. Well, given the unprecedented times of the Depression, Roosevelt said there's just no way that we're going to be bound by that amount of money to print and issue. We got to break this tie on the gold standard, and we've got to go over to a fiat currency. Okay, the paper dollar. And thus it was done, as Americans in droves had 30 days to turn in their gold in April of 1933. And for all intents and purposes, It was the period of stimulation and federally backed issuing and trying desperately to do inflationary moves, printing money, creating new programs, and deficit spending on the order of what John Maynard Keynes, the famed economist, his idea is that governments should spend like crazy when times are bad. And then when times are good, they should increase the taxes greatly to replenish the treasury. Now, of course, in practical terms, it's very hard to increase the taxes. And we know in good times that not much has ever been done to offset the spending, the deficit spending that is done in bad times. It's not politically palatable. And there is the problem and the fallacy of that system. In our democracy, it simply won't work. People are very adverse to higher taxes, for sure. So as we stand today, we have at least $2 to $4 trillion of new paper that's being created. The Chinese hold $1 trillion of our assets. Yes, they're concerned about the loss of value with the making the pie. Cutting the pie here. They're very worried about the value, as there's anybody that's lent the trillions of dollars to us and to other nations around the world that find themselves as heavy borrowers. And, there's a price to be paid for that, and we will probably pay that down the road. In the meantime, we've had a nice rebound. We could continue basing for a while, but I still feel pretty certain there's another big leg to this move, because we're in unprecedented times. We've been shown the tremendous fragility of a service-based economy. 60% of the people in the nation work in a service-based economy. And we see how easy it is to cut people, because once again, most services are just wants and not needs. They're great to have in flush times, but it's amazing what people can do with that when times get tough. So we'll see how the rebound works. Things will be pretty good. It gives us time to government to fight the pandemic and put into place measures. But we don't know what kind of long tail this whole episode will have. We don't know what kind of structural changes will be in place for years. So it's going to be a very, very tenuous situation, but it'll be an interesting one too. I will also note that farmers and people along the food chain, they're just as susceptible to illness as anybody else. Countries are beginning to embargo their exports of grains and things, keeping them for their own populace. So I would be concerned. I put a post out about on my Rosie O'Kelly channel about Mexican supermarket that was raided by 70 people and emptied out. So, we want to take steps when these stimulus checks hit. As I've said before, people aren't likely going to be buying big screen TVs or lift kits for their trucks or the latest in Bose stereo equipment. This time around, they're probably going to be getting essential items for survival, one of which, and the main one, is food. So we can expect these stresses and strains on the food supply to continue and possibly even accentuate in the months ahead. So having bulk goods on the shelf is a wise thing. Not a lot of people will follow the advice, and that's fine. It'll be good for years and years and years, and there really isn't any downside to being prepared. So, as for gold and silver, well, draw your own conclusion. Rapid expansion in the money supply in 2008 in response to the Great Recession triggered off a big boom in metals, and they were all repriced to new steady basic levels of around $1,500 for gold and something around $15 for silver, far different than the $5 around 2005. So it's just a new natural level, and it's just responding to what's going on with the inflation of the paper money supply. So all right, everybody. So that tells you what I think about the future that. Keep your eye on the grain markets too. Soybeans, corn, and wheat. Okay, they are the backbone staples, along with soybean oil and not so much the meats. You can kind of do without the meats if you have to, but basic grains or the stock of life, rice too. Keep an eye on them for indications whether there could be a massive increase in wholesale commodity prices, which will ripple through the supermarkets. We just have to see. Anyway, have a great rest of your Saturday. Thumbs up are appreciated. Your comments are welcome in the suggestion box below. Thanks, everybody.